Well, good evening. It's the evening starting here. We're in the summertime. If you're listening to this on the replay, I don't know. I don't know where you're at. I don't know what time it is. I don't know, but we're in the summer. We were just talking to our co-host, Katrina, who takes care of all the technical stuff while we're here on this call. And she's down in Australia and we're up here. She's in a giant parka, giant coat, and we're fans sweating here. It's hot and humid, and we're both, I know Lynda's going to be joining me here in just a second. We're in the South. And so it's kind of funny to speak to someone on the other side of the world who's freezing cold and they're in the middle of winter. I was talking with Pietra the other night and the same thing happened. We had a really great conversation and it was the same thing. She's all bundled up and I was in like a tank top sweating. So, but good evening and welcome to the discipleship class. This is going to be a great night. We're going to do something tonight. We're going to go into the Amidah prayer, and I'm going to go ahead and add Miss Lynda in on here. Lynda Millet is going to hop in here and she's going to, did I do the wrong thing? I think I did. There we go. Sorry. There we go.
Oh,
and there, now you are. Ta-da.
I'm here.
You're here now. So we are going to chat about a little bit. I'm going to say we, and by we, I mean Lynda, is going to talk about the Amidah prayer. And so I'll be just handling like sharing my screen and showing you guys some slides as she kind of goes through things. Just curious, as you're watching this on the replay, I want you to just say chat in the chat box or in the comments, make comments. I'd love to hear what your experience is. Are you currently going through a prayer? Are you going through the Amidah prayers? What do you know about it? So as we're starting this call out, I'd like to hear real quick from ladies that are on here now. You can put it in the chat. You can unmute yourself real quick. And I'd love to hear what's your experience. Misty, do you Amidah? How do we say?
No, I do not.
Do you Amidah?
Do you stand?
Do you do the standing prayer? Anyone else? Tammy, Cindy, anyone else? Do you participate or do you guys use the Amidah prayers at all in your walk? I'm thinking no. Lynda, how long has it been since you've started? When did you start incorporating the Amidah in your practice?
Probably about 2.5 years ago. And I noticed, I read Bill Bullock's daily readings. And on the intro, he always puts a piece of the Amidah on there. And I totally ignored it for, I don't know, 5 years, 6 years. And then, hey, it's there. You just see it.
Blah, 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 yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so what happened was I got into a stalemate in prayer. I was trying to bring in the prayer that I had learned after 40 some years in the church. And I had no words. I had no words anymore. I just couldn't talk to God. I couldn't, whatever I was doing didn't work. And I wanted to know why. And so I just felt like, I think I'm probably the last person you would ever dream that would say, I'm going to pray a liturgical prayer today.
Sister, I have to tell you that when Brenda shared with me that you had sent this to her, and I was like, Lynda does the Amidah prayer, really? Like that was, you're right. You were the last person. Well, maybe not the last, but.
Oh, I am. I'm the very last, the end of the caboose of that. I'm not into liturgical prayers. I'm a very free thinking, I want to pray. I want to be prophetic. I want to be blah, blah, blah. I
want to go with the spirit, right? This is so not spiritual enough.
Right. Liturgical prayers. What would they know? Right. I mean, we've only had thousands of years to figure this out. So when I was looking for words, I was trying to learn Hebrew at the same time, at least some of the energy in the letters under Brenda's class and her teaching there on the Rooted Cafe. And I knew that there had to be something better. And what I was running into is several things. My covenant relationship with the Father, which is deepening as we studied Torah, and his sovereignty and his will. And how do I approach him? Now, heretofore, I was praying in such a way
that's very fancy. That's very fancy language. Heretofore. Heretofore. Into and to the extent that.
It doesn't. My son and I say that all the time between each other. So when I ran out of words and I started looking at the Amidah, these words started jumping out at me. And not only the words, it was the way that they were spoken. It was the way that they approached the Holy One. And I started quieting myself inside. And instead of, I was a Pentecostal Christian, and I didn't pray the will of God. I prayed what I thought was a spirit-led prayer, and probably sometimes they were, but I have to tell you, this is kind of the shotgun approach that I was doing.
Mm-hmm.
And I started learning as I was doing some jail ministry that, people want me to pray their kid out of jail or pray out of their circumstances. And I started seeing, maybe that's not the best thing for that person right now, because I've seen them and they probably need to be there for a while and learn something and change. So there was another thing is praying against circumstances, not praying the will of the Lord. And the other thing that's big rock in the road that I could not go under, around, or over was his sovereignty.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sometimes he just is not going to do what I want him to.
And sometimes he's holding things back that we can't see. I mean, I talked about this today when I was teaching about this portion, is with the words in the snakes when they came in. It wasn't that he sent snakes. He had been holding them back, and he released them. So now they could be in the camp, because he had protected them all along from that. So sometimes he will release something he's holding back, and we look at it like it's a giant catastrophe, and it's not. I'm looking forward to this, and I will back out here, and I'm going to just pop up this PowerPoint for you to kind of go through. But I want to tell you that I personally am excited about going through this, because when it's been first brought up to me, and it was because of you, that this is something I need to do, that I went back when I realized I've been reading over this little Amidah prayer at the top of my rabbi son reading for the last 20 years. I've just been ignoring it. And I just read through it, but I never thought, well, where'd that come from? And then when you said, and then then the next step was, oh, well, where do I get this from? And which parts do I read? And how do I do it? And so I'm going to tell you, that's kind of where I left it, because I thought, oh, that's one more thing. How do I have to figure this all out? And this has brought it to my attention now. It's like, we need to figure this out, because like you had said, I feel like I'm at a stalemate in my prayers. And I think that he's allowed this and caused it so that I could level up. Like, I don't even really know how to pray for things anymore. And I'm at a loss, and I feel like it's for this reason. So thank you for taking the time to do this with us.
Well, okay. So what does the Amidah consist of? What is it about? One of the things that I read about the Amidah, which is just stunning, I thought, was God is already speaking. The Holy One is always speaking since creation, and the voice that went out. And how do we engage with that voice? And the Hebrew thought on prayer is not that we are just bursting in the room and just starting talking to our Abba, which there's a place for that, but that we are engaging now with that same voice that began with those Yehi or words that started creation going in the first place. And now we are in a flow. We are in a flow with our Father. And we are communing with the Father in a covenant relationship with him. And that's kind of what started exciting me. As I started praying in a very rudimentary fashion, I started seeing what he was doing as I prayed these prayers. It was just amazing. So the Amidah is, there's first three are blessings. And I have heard that is compared to, say, a servant speaking to his master, saying about his goodness, speaking of his goodness. Father, you're good. You are good. Goodness is your name, he says. If we're not anchored in the goodness of God, I've heard someone say, I think it was Christina Grifford Black, then we will lower our theology to match our pain. I don't know if you got that, but I sure did. When we go through stuff in life and the circumstances start pressing us, it's very easy to lose sight of the goodness of God. What I found, the Amidah consistently sets me back there. It takes me down and does a reset. So who should recite the Amidah? Well, as we go through these blessings and these petitions and the thanksgiving, who would not want to? I mean, once you realize there's a divine empowerment in those words, that those words are all being spoken to the King, the Creator of the Most High universe, the Most High God, why would we know it? Those words are so precious, and they can steer us to where, when we're not praying the Amidah, we have a better grasp of how to approach the Holy One. In my past, I did not always spend time honoring the Father before I started just blurting out the need, the crisis du jour. And so my expectation was that he loved me so much, he was going to forgive me for that. He was just going to let me keep going on. That didn't work. When heaven's turned to brass and your hair prayers aren't being heard anymore, or you're not even able to speak those prayers anymore, it's time to get back to, who are you speaking to, and what do you expect him to do? What do you expect to change about the situation? And part of that is praying Amidah doesn't change the Father. It doesn't change maybe even our circumstances immediately, but what it will change is it will change your point of view. It will change your heart. It will change your mind. It will renew your mind into a consistent Hebraic thought about who the Father is. The 13 petitions in the middle of the Amidah are not spoken on Shabbat, because Hebrew thought you don't express those petitions to the Father on Shabbat. You rest in him. So you still say the blessings, and you still say the first 3 blessings and the last 3 blessings, which one is praise and one is thanksgiving. But those petitions in between are left for the other 6 days of the week. So anyway, so man is often unaware of what his needs are, from what I've been reading, and I really feel that's a truism. If we only know what we want, but we don't know what we need, how are we ever going to change? One of the things that I felt was missing in my walk before I started studying Torah, and certainly before I started reading the Amidah, is this desire to change from the inside out. This desire to let him do that metamorphosis that he'd been longing to do for so long. And this praying the Amidah helps my heart to get into that position where I allow him greater access to my heart, to expose the things that maybe I've hidden even from myself or from him, and make it right. And that doesn't mean I go out digging up every little thing I've ever done in my past. That's not it at all. But the Holy One will bring to my remembrance certain things, certain attitudes, certain ways that I behaved in the past that were not appropriate or that were not pleasing to him. And as I prayed that Amidah, these things started coming up, not in any heavy sense of, self-flagellation, or, but it was more of, oh, I never saw that before. I'm really surprised. So my surprise in what happened as I started praying the Amidah was, he's changing me from the inside out. He's the author and finisher of our faith, and he's going in there with this structured prayer, revealing himself to me and who he is. And he's also revealing my heart. And I don't know about you, but when I first read that the heart is desperately wicked and who can know it, that got me to the quick. It can't be true. I always follow my own heart. Well, not so much anymore. I realize now that there's things that we can hide from ourselves. So the Amidah is, you start praying first with the Father on the Avots. The Father of, we talk about Abraham, we talk about Yitzhak, we talk about Yaakov, and each one of those principal patriarchs had a different facet of a relationship with the Holy One. And what we're doing is we're drawing upon that. We're saying, that's what I want in my life. I want to be the friend of God. I want to be the one who walked and prayed as Yitzhak did. I want to be the one who established Israel as Yaakov did. You want that type of relationship to deepen with. So anyway, let me keep. So the primary purpose in saying all that is just the Avot, I guess it didn't even make sense to me. As I prayed the Avot and I started praying about the Father and the fact that he is the redeemer of life, he's the giver of life, it reestablishes in my mind who he is and what he is doing and what he's continuing to do. And since he thinks generationally, and I have not thought generationally, I don't think a lot of the people that I've been in church with really do. Salvation was always a personal experience. It wasn't necessarily something that I thought about other than I hope my kids get saved, or I pray that my kids get saved, or I take them to church and, try to raise them up in the nurture and admonition of the Lord. But thinking on and on and on and generationally would never really came to my mind until I started praying the Amidah. And what that purpose is. And maybe I don't fulfill my complete purpose in this lifetime, but that goes on to the next generation, to the next, sowing seed. So the petitions are pretty straightforward as you read them. I don't know, Charlie, if we're going to be able to put up the translation or the transliteration at the end, but I'm not going to go into every single one of those because they're basically just requests. I will say, however, that the very first request is for the knowledge. This is for knowledge, and that's not meaning
just a quick. We have, if you go into your library under this call, I've already put the transliteration, the translation, and the transliteration. Both are in a PDF format, so you can download those and print them. Even now, if you're on your phone and you go into your Kajabi app, you could go and open those right now and look at them as we're going through them. Also, this PowerPoint is in there. And then also at the end of this PowerPoint, you'll see Harish has a chart on the Lord's Prayer as well. So all of that information is inside your library under this cafe call for today. It's already posted for you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay. So the very first petition is for knowledge, and it's not head knowledge. It's not knowledge about Torah. It's not knowledge even about God. It's knowledge about the fear of the Lord. It's knowledge about him. Who are you? I want to know you more. I want to go deeper with you. So that's the kind of knowledge that we're putting into practice every time we say the Amidah. There's prayers in there for healing that you can expand upon. Any of these prayers you can expand upon. You can open up prayers for repentance, prayers for forgiveness, prayers for the blessing of Israel, for restoring the kingdom. They all flow out of a desire to keep us on track in our walk with the Holy One. And actually, they were done by, I think, people say Ezra, but the Sanhedrin back about 1500 BC or something. But it's been a long time since this was put into place, and then it was reformulated over the centuries, and then kind of codified into this what we know as the Amidah now, and not changed a whole lot since the first or second century AD. So, I mean, and I can see Ezra wanting to do this because look, they were talking about rebuilding the temple. They were talking about taking people who had been disciplined for falling away, and we want to make sure that we are still going to stay on track, that this is going to be in perpetuity, that this isn't going to die out with our generation, that the grandmas and grandpas that are learning this, that your grandchildren, your great-grandchildren, that your seed, these next generations will be able to consistently walk with the Father as we have. So did Yeshua recite the Amidah? I believe he did. He was Torah trained, obviously. I mean, he was teaching his disciples to pray. And I would kind of like to segue a little bit into that part that I did about the correlation between the Amidah and the prayer we call, the Lord's Prayer. And maybe this will help you simplify it a little bit in your own mind. I'm not sure. But anyway, when we start the Lord's Prayer, I found somebody that had done this in Hebrew. And it was exciting to me. I got so tickled. I just to hear it in Hebrew instead of in English meant so much more to me, because it's Our Father who art in heaven, Avinu Shabbat Shamayim. So it just as the Amidah starts with the Avot, the blessing of the fathers, and for the Father to remember us and our generations, so does the Lord's Prayer. It relates to that very first first blessing that he's the God of Abraham, the God of Yitzchak, the God of Yaakov. He is Avinu, our Father. And then hallowed be thy name. Yid kadesh shimcha. Be sanctified your name. May we live our lives in such a way that we bring him glory. You know, as I was reading the Torah portion this week, and I see Moshe being told to speak to that rock and tell that rock to produce that water before these people so that his name would be glorified. And Moshe is so mad that he strikes that rock twice and said, must we give you water from this rock? This is exactly what we're talking about here. Be sanctified your name. We think hallowed be thy name is meaning you're not supposed to curse. To be sanctified your name as it relates to this third blessing in the Amidah. Kedushat Hashem, the holiness of God's name. It doesn't mean we're not allowed to speak his name as much as or profane his name or swear or anything else. It means when you face that rock and you're told to speak to that rock, you don't hit it with your stick. You don't go off on your own. You don't seek your own glory in that. You seek the Father, you seek his goodness, you seek his glory, you seek to bring him glory. You die to yourself and your own opinions and your own agendas, and you swallow that and you just say, whatever's going to bring you glory, that's what I'm going to do now. That's how we hallow his name. That's how we sanctify his name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done. See, Tova Malkutaka, Be'asa Retshoneka Baharetz Ke'asher Ne'asa Vashamayim. That relates to that Birkat Hadim, one of the petitions, which is a plea for the restoration of justice, which would bring about the will of the Father. So may his kingdom continue to be established. The kingdom is to be. Can I read something real quick from Valerie Moody? I think that's probably the best way to say it. He says, and I couldn't speak it any better than her. She says, the kingdom of heaven advances by pushing light into the darkness. The kingdom is violent. The term beazo in Matthew 11:12. Beazo means to apply force and push into. The violent take the kingdom by force, implying a personal struggle against the Yetzir Hara, or the evil inclination, which is in all of us. This is why the heart is desperately wicked, and who can know it? In their own way, people are spiritually violent as they drive back worldly influences to embrace the kingdom. We have to deny ourselves and take up our cross and follow him. And that's not something we always want to do. At least this person, and this is a struggle. There's sometimes I feel like my own agenda, my own plans are closing in on me, and he'll give me a UE and say, no, that's not where we're going to be today. We're going to do my will instead of yours. So the kingdom, to continue to have that kingdom be established in our generations, in our life, means that we have got to be in cooperation with the Father, body, mind, and soul. We have to be in oneness with him. So give us this day our daily bread. Ten lenu hayam lachem kukenu. That relates to that ninth blessing, which is the appeal for a prosperous year, which is an exciting petition. When you read that, you think, oh my goodness, he's asked for everything that I wouldn't even think of to pray for. The fruit in due season and the sunshine and the rain and everything we need in order to be blessed. As we pray the Jewish blessing after our meals now, we're learning that our Father, who is also our creator, he's given us life, but he's also given us a livelihood and sustenance. Everything comes from him. I never looked at it that way, as giving us a day of daily bread. It's more like, oh, it's not a piece of that. Thank you very much. I never really thought that I can rest in him and say that, of course, he's going to give me my daily bread because he's my creator. He's the beneficent one. Goodness is his name. He is going to continue to provide for me and for our house, no matter what goes on outside these walls, no matter what recession comes, no matter what shortages come, it doesn't matter. He will sustain. Forgive us our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass against us. Uselak lenu et ashamatenu, ki ashar solakim anaknu leashar lenu. That relates to that sixth blessing of Selah, which means to Father forgive us. It's not the same as Teshuvah. Forgiveness and Teshuvah are two different acts. But this asking for the Father to forgive us is also in the Amidah. It's also as in Matthew 6, it was in the Lord's Prayer. And we need to remember that as we forgive, that's the measure that we are forgiven. So that unforgiveness in my heart that I had for so long, because I felt like these people are not entitled to my forgiveness, or I'm entitled to maintain that unforgiveness, whichever way, it was totally an error. So we need to just make sure that this, I have to make sure that my ducks in a row, that I don't have unforgiveness in my heart. And those are the things that the Father reveals to me as I pray the Amidah. Things will come up. I'll see a face and it says, you're hardening your heart against that person. I'm like, yeah, I did. And then I have to go back and dig out my reasons and say, I'm really sorry. And if I can make amends on that, I will make amends. And if not, I'm going to leave it in your hands until he helps me to deal with it in fullness. So lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. Vial tevienu lede masa, ki'im hatzilenu min hara. And Masa should sound real familiar to us for those who read the Torah portion, because that's, it's mentioned a couple of times, but that's in Exodus 17:7, where it was a striving at the water. Masa, it was a striving. They tempted God in the wilderness, and he named the place Masa. But, I saw where it was it was translated as a test, trial, and that much I knew. But what I didn't know, as I went into Blue Letter Bible Hub and Esenius, that it can mean despair. And then I started seeing another picture of not just keep me from the evil one, not just keep me from the devil or some kind of attack. Because in the Pentecostal church, I'm telling you what, there was a devil behind every bush, and it was nobody's fault but his. You had no part in that to play. Well, the Father begs to differ. And there's times that we cannot give our best effort because we're holding back because of fear or doubt or unbelief or whatever. I know in my own heart, that's the Messiah that I really worry about far more now than Hasatan. Because I found out that I met the enemy. It looks like this in real time, I'm telling. So that relates to, there you go. The seventh blessing with Galua, who is the Redeemer, for the sake of her name. So the Father will redeem us. He will forgive us. He will take us out of temptation. He will lead us. He's our kinsman redeemer. He's our Boaz. He knows how to deliver the temptation, he says in Peter. So he says this, for the part where it ends in the Lord's Prayer, for thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory forever. That's kilaka hamamlaka behagavura beha tiferet le olamim amen. Now that's not in both of the Gospels. That was only in Matthew, but not in Luke. But I found a kind of a mirror of that in 1 Chronicles 29, where David was praying, and he prayed some of those very same words. So I can see why that was attached into the Lord's Prayer. But this is just a sample on this sheet of what is in the Lord's Prayer that Yeshua taught us. That's also in the Amidah. And actually, if I were to explore it a bit more, I'm sure I would find much, much more. That was just a quick, first dig. So I really do believe, yes, Yeshua prayed the Amidah, and yes, he would expect us to as well. There was a sense of obligation to pray the Amidah, is what I had read by the sages. And once the temple sacrifices ceased, then this was taking the place then of those morning, evening, and afternoon, and evening sacrifices. It's funny that those first three blessings, expressions, no, I guess it was the last three, excuse me. The last three that are in Thanksgiving, those were the same words that the Kohanim would say at the end of the morning sacrifice. The end three of the Amidah, And that's 3, the Hodu and the Thanksgiving. And I thought that's really interesting that after that morning sacrifice, this was something that was spoken by the priest of thanksgiving, that it's in God's name, in the treasure that he is. Let's see. Recited 3 times a day. I don't recite it 3 times a day. I'm not really able to stand for the entirety of it because I have some neuropathy in my feet and I have a difficulty standing that long. But I do say it, and I try to say mine actually at the afternoon. And I was reading Dr. Alwine's book, which Standing with Israel, which is all about the Amidah, and I really recommend it. She takes apart the Amidah in each and every blessing, all 19 of them, and then explains what the intent was. But she was talking about Cornelius and Peter and how Peter was called to go to the house of Cornelius at that time of day. And she really believes, and I've read other people's teachings too, that Cornelius was praying the Amidah at that time of day, because that would have been the Mincha prayer. And that's a time when you have to stop working in order to do that. And see, in the morning, your day is not set yet, and you're really speaking into that day and all the potential of that day for morning prayers. And at night, you are resting in him. You're saying, I'm saying these prayers and I'm going to bed, and I'm trusting that the Father is still present. He's still there. He's still guiding the universe. He's still in control. But for the afternoon prayer, you have to be very intentional about doing it. You have to physically stop what you're doing and doing it. Some people have said that Yeshua did the Lord's Prayer so that they could still say that the prayers, the obligatory, if you will, for the 3 times a day in a shorter version, since maybe they didn't have time. And I don't know if that's true. This is, you're talking like a couple of eons have gone by since then. So who knows, who knows why Yeshua said this was maybe a shortened version of the Amidah, which I truly believe. But was it for efficiency's sake? I don't know. I really don't. But for me, I like to do that 3 o'clock one because it makes me intentional. I put an app on my phone to tell me now's the time. I do listen to it on Chabad.org, CHABAD.org, and they have an audio of it. However, I do not do that. There's one petition I don't say because of Dr. Alwine and others' teachings, and that is it's called the Birkat Hamanit, and it's the one where we're talking about defeating our enemies and annihilating them. And it was added a lot of time. It's the 19th one. It's not a part of the original 18. It was stuck in there for uncovering sectarians. And what the thought was is that there were some Essenes and some Messianic Jews that were, if they spoke that, they would actually invoke a curse upon themselves. So people would say the 18, but then they would skip that one, and then they were noticeably and visibly, on view for the whole world to see. Okay, you can't say that one, so we know you're a heretic. So I just avoid that one. And I think that was good counsel by Dr. Alwyn. The Holy Temple and its service should be restored. We go to gratitude and thanks. The word there is avodah. And when we go, that praise, there we go, keep going, one more. The Holy Temple and the service should be restored. They're talking about that during this, during the Amidah. And if you look up avodah and you Google it, it's going to say work, worship, service, work, worship, service. I think it's a bit more than that. And when I was taking it apart, let's see, it's ayin, vet, vav, dalet, and hey. So if ayin is the eye, or whatever the soul can see or sense, which would reflect your state of mind and your emotions, right? And then vet, which is that without the Dagash. That's the king on his throne or the head of household on his seat of honor. And then the Vav, which is the tent peg or the nail or connector, something that connects. Then you've got your Dalat, which is your doorway or portal or passageway between two realms. And your Hay, which is your window or, or the opening in the tent flap that lets in the fresh air and changes your vision, your perspective, your revelation, brings inspiration. And I thought, Amidah, if you put all that together, to me, it sounds like the soul can enter into this time of worship and see that king on his throne and see the Holy Father, see him as the head, the seat of honor, and honor him. And that connects us through that Vav to this passageway between two realms and brings about revelation and inspiration and a change of perspective, a change of our vision. And to me, that's more meaningful than fire offerings of the temple service to be restored. The fire offerings, prayer is considered, tefillah is considered the Amidah of the heart. So if we're going to just, we can do the mitzvah. My husband can go in and he can tie on his tzitzit, or he can, he can blow the shofar, or we can honor Shabbat to the best of our ability, and we can do mitzvah without having a lot of heart involvement. And I see people do that all the time. You cannot pray without heart involvement. The heart has got to be engaged. It is a service of the heart. So it takes you far deeper than just doing the mitzvah. So praying the Amidah as a mitzvah, I could stand there and say, okay, I got 12 minutes. I'm going to just, and rip it through it. I won't get much out of it. But I can tell you, I have sat there with the Shabbat Amidah, which is actually a little bit different because it doesn't have those petitions, the 13 petitions. It has the 3 beginning and the 3 ending blessings. But in the middle one, there's another one on the holiness of God. And I have to tell you, I have seen those letters dance. I have seen the power and the creativity of the Father speaking through his words, through those words. So he really does have a way to get into our heart, to work into our heart with these simple words. Can't tell you how he does it, but I read those letters, I see those letters, and I don't even understand them. Like, I'm not the teacher that Brenda is. I don't have the grasp that you guys have for sitting under Bill all these times. But I do know that it will speak to your heart. It will draw you in. It's funny because my first prayer before I started the Amidah was Shehekianu. Say a little something about that. And this is probably why I started praying the Amidah, Charlie, is I was in the hospital a couple of times about 12 years ago, and I was really sick. And the second time I had a really bad night, and I was in about a week in ICU, and I knew I was in trouble. And about daybreak, I saw these things like in the spirit room popping up. Looked like dandelion puffs. I'm not kidding. They looked like white, beautiful flowers that were unfolding. I saw about 15 of them. And I don't know what that did to my body, but I turned a corner and got better the next day and was out of that room and into the general floor and got better very quick. So a few years later, we moved to Texas, and I've got this Hebrew channel on YouTube, and the Shehekianu prayer came up random. And it had these white things, puffs like dandelion. And it looked just like I saw in my vision in that hospital. So I just stuck my face right to the television. I'm like, what in the world? And so what he's talking about in that Shehekianu is he's kept us alive for such a time as this. Our purpose for being here has been foreordained. We're not accidents. Our circumstances are not accidents. We are where we're supposed to be, and he has got us. And I think that being able to see that visually, I mean, it just, it just anchored me into knowing that the Father's got this. He's got me. The Shehekianu, he's kept us alive for such a time as this. We thank him for bringing us here. Can't imagine going through what we're going through socially and in our country right now without having Torah, without having fellowship, without having this walk with the Father, without having an anchor for our soul. He says in the Thanksgiving in the last 3 verses, Atov Shemka, the good one is your name. Being anchored in his goodness. That's what these things are teaching me. Realizing that he is the giver of life. He's the sustainer of life. And he knows how to bring in our children and our grandchildren. And he knows what the future holds, and he will bring his word to pass. He will fulfill it. Has anybody got anything to say about this? Because I feel like we're talking an awful lot. Any questions?
Good. Let's bring it in. So nice kind of an overview. And again, she's probably using words that many of you have never heard before. This is part of, and so asking those questions when she was calling out different names, like she had heard a certain part of the Amidah prayer, as she's called each section that we talked about actually has a name to that section. So there's now 19 sections, but each has a name to it. So when she was saying those words, like, oh, it could be a blessing, they each have a name. So she was referring to those names, and you'll get used to those as you go through them. And again, we have those if you go into this call, you can pull them up, and it's from Chabad.org. We grabbed them from there. You could go through them and just go through them and read them out loud. And we have both the transliteration as well as the translation. So you get both sides of it. You can get it directly from the Hebrew. And then Cindy made a comment on here that Sambra and Lori Dawn actually did the prayers in Hebrew and in English for you all when we were over in Slack. I will go find those and download them for you.
Yeah.
Also put them under this, also put them in band, so that she's saying you can. Cindy, you want to unmute yourself? Tell me your experience with that.
Okay, there we are. It's a little dark, sorry. We're
okay.
having a thunderstorm.
Oh.
But just wanting somebody to pray with. And I just thought, I heard their recording. I love it because it's in English and Hebrew, and they sing some of them too, which I love too. And so I would every day, I would do it with them. So it's like I was not alone. I was doing it with friends. And yeah, it just became a thing, and I just love it. It's really neat.
And Cindy, that one prayer about heretics, against heretics, was it's the 19th one, but it's in position of the 12th.
Okay, got it.
So it
Yeah,
would be the 12th. Yeah.
Okay.
It's called Birkat Hamanim. But the original, like I said, it was supposed to screen out and identify people who weren't walking true to traditional Judaism. So.
Okay. Yeah, that's good to know.
And you're going to hear some people say, oh, well, this is so, I don't know, this is so from Babylon. Well, one of the reasons that we see that happening is because, again, the people had forgotten their way. A lot of the things that came out of Babylon, it is my position and my understanding today. It wasn't all bad, y'all. I mean, right. It came out because they were saying, we're never going to let this happen again. We're not going to forget it. Kim, I know when you were going through your process and when you were going through your studies in Judaism, what was you want to share your experience with the Amidah? Like how you incorporated that into your life?
Well, we took it. It's a very long process. So it was a 1.5 years of information. And I remember probably we spent a month on explaining why each prayer is said. I don't remember Minim being part of it, honestly. until I read Halisa's book, did I understand that it was written in a lot of places. But in my experience, it was, I'll have to go back and look in my books, but I don't remember there being 19. I was only taught 18.
And I got that off Chabad.org, that there was 19 now.
I believe there are some but I'll be honest with you, Judaism is like any other religion. There are
Yeah.
many denominations of Judaism. So, I mean, I will go back and look, but I can't I learned so much in that year and a half. I can't really say specifically. I only remember learning 18. So I will
Okay,
go back and
that's
see if
fine.
19 were part of it.
How do you incorporate the Amidah now into your life? Was it strange at first to go to this such a
No.
ritual thing for you?
Well, no, I guess my experience, I went immediately because I was a brand new nurse,
Mm-hmm.
and I immediately started working at a Jewish summer camp. And so I had everything there is Hebrew. I even my instructions with the children, I had to get English because I didn't know enough Hebrew to do everything for nursing in Hebrew. So they made an exception for me my first year. And I said, I'm sorry, I can't be accurate.
Right.
But every church, every service, Shabbat, we were given time during the day to have breaks to do what we needed to do, because camp, it was a conservative Jewish children's camp, but we had 700 people living there we had 2 sessions. And so everybody was on a different place, but it was complete Hebrew immersion, and it was at the strictest code of food so that the strictest person could still eat.
Nice.
The only rules were that no food could be taken back to the camp, to the bunks, because they didn't want kids who weren't as strict intimidating the other kids. Does that make sense? They wanted everybody to have the freedom to be where they were. And when we all came together in the together sessions for eating and everything was the same. But as far as like practicing the Amidah, we were given time. Even as a nurse, I worked 20 hours a day, but I was given time if I wanted to go pray. And I could do it with a minion, or I could do it alone. I could choose.
And now how does that incorporate in your life? Do you pray 3 times a day? How have you noticed a change in your prayer life?
Twice a day.
Mm-hmm.
Because I've incorporated so many other prayers into my life that I've also found significant with, I mean, the joke is that if you're saying 100 prayers a day, you're almost there. And I'm just nowhere near that. Like I seriously work. And, but there are some that have become truly significant to me. The Shema is very significant. I do try to say that at least twice a day. When I read I try to say the Amidah at least once a day. And it kind of helps me to what she said tonight about maybe if I'm still working at 3:00, I could use the New Testament prayer, and I'm going to try that on and see what that does. Sometimes I don't learn it. I'm a kinesthetic learner, and I sometimes don't know what it's going to feel like till I actually do it. And then God will use what I'm doing to teach me a lesson. But sometimes I can't learn till I actually put my hands on something and do it.
Like that. I'm the same way. If I can hear it and I'm great, but if I get my hands on it, then it's part of who I am. Now, are there ladies in here and want full disclosure? If you see, I started kind of throwing over that Zoom. I don't know if you can download this file, but I found the link of the girls doing the prayer with Sombra and Lori Dawn. I found it while y'all were talking. I went over and scouted it out. But anyone have a difficulty? I'll be honest, this was difficult for me to swallow at first, that like it's too liturgical. Someone's telling me what to pray. This feels very religious to me. I feel like I shouldn't be this is how I used to feel. Very old bondage. I want to say these things out loud because I know some of you might be feeling this and maybe you're afraid to say it. I want to encourage you to maybe just go in and read them out loud, because I believe that what you'll find is, again, yes, this is something Yeshua would have done. Personally, one of the stories behind the Lord's Prayer, just so that you know, all rabbis, their students would ask their rabbi, and the rabbi would have a specific prayer specific to that rabbi. So when they would say, teach us to pray, they wanted to have his specific prayer. And so that's what he was teaching them. And I believe that it was a prayer that encompassed the approaches. I believe that prayer was to show them how to approach the Father. I also love the incorporation of, I think he's multidimensional. So he's also showing you, when they heard the words, they were like, oh, okay, yeah, I know what that is. I know it. Where for us, we don't live then, we're not grown up in the culture. So it's difficult for us to see the connections. There was multiple connections. So when he would have given this prayer, they would have been like, oh, that's genius. Because he would have just interwoven so many cool things that his prayer was all the prayers. Like, this is it. Like, this is all the prayers. So if you're a person that are like, well, I just do the Lord's Prayer, and I do that, it should be guided for you, right? Because for me, I have a little prayer. I say it all the time. I shouldn't have an identity if I have ADHD, but I have a gift of being able to do a lot of things at the same time. And
yeah, you do.
And the limitation of that gift is that I can easily be distracted in the middle of all those things. So doing one thing at a time requires, at my age, I've learned to discipline. I've learned how to focus. I use specific tools that have incorporated to be able to get through that. But I'll tell you that when I'm praying, and I've shared this with you, a lot of you before, I will start praying. It'll be like, Father, I just ask that you would heal the pain in my elbow. Oh, my elbow hurts. Remember, I heard it on the washing machine. Did I take that load of clothes out? I wonder, I need to go get that load right now. And it needs to go in the dryer because tomorrow we're going to go to that thing. Oh, did I get the tickets for that? And I'm done. I am down a trail. There is no saving me. And it could be, and then I've fallen asleep. Now I'm asleep. So by the time I'm somewhere in this process, I've fallen asleep. I'm talking about a nighttime prayer, right? And then the rest of the time I found recently, I've been struggling start praying for things. And I'm struggling with finding words because I don't feel that I understand the sovereignty of my King. And I realize some of the things that I pray are not acknowledging his sovereignty. So when I started reading the Amidah, when I started begin the studying of this, and I do encourage you to get the book from Holy Sal. I mean, there's so many books, right? Good Lord, there's so many books. Oh, I have another book to get. If you need help in this, otherwise you can go online. And I know I spent a lot of time in this on Chabad.org. The same is that the reason you go in different places, you can find, again, that is a very Jewish site. And so just understand that that's how it is. But you're going to find that walking through this, it should be kind of guided for you. Do you find it, Lynda, that now as you're praying and you bring up, like as you go through the morning prayers or whatever, you start to your prayers, you're doing your at afternoons, does it then lead you to into another area that maybe you find yourself being able to pray a little longer? So some of you are like, my prayer life is kind of weak. Has it helped you?
I like what Cindy said it perfectly. She said the structure of the liturgy leaves room for the Spirit moving in your heart, moving your heart to appropriate points to add personal present points. I agree with that. I think that it set you on a floor, a foundation. So that, for instance, when we pray the prayer for healing, I add you, I add Brenda, I add all the sick that I know of, and then add the ones that I said, I'm sure there's people who are sick I don't even know, but we pray for all the sick. We start saying, incorporate that into those prayers. I think that once I've got a little bit of a footing underneath me, I do morning prayers, but the liturgical prayers, I was so surprised that it put me on, it took me out of this brat mode that I had somehow gotten into, when I...
Tell me more about this. Tell me what that means to you.
Well, okay. The Lord showed me where I had actually boasted in my heart that I didn't need to pray his will, that I was praying in the Spirit. And he showed me the very day that I first did that. because I was taught in my original denominational church where I did become born again, to be praying for his will. Oh Lord, please heal that person if it be your will. Well, I was like, I'm not praying that. I'm going in. And yeah. And now I'm a little bit more careful about the things that can be taught. I live with chronic pain. I have a lot of health issues. And I have to tell you, pain can be a chisel. And yes, I prayed for healing, and it didn't come. And I was actually, people will give you that look where they're saying, Charlie, well, you just didn't pray right, or you have unforgiveness in your heart, or there's something you did that's keeping you from receiving from God. And what I found out is he is so much after my heart. If he allows discomfort, if in my circumstances, and he turns up the heat, it is only because he knows that that's the only way he's going to be able to take me out of this attitude of entitlement, of these high expectations, of my own agenda, and bring me back down to earth and center me in front of him and get back in alignment. And I don't tell it to too many people, because I don't want them to run out of the room screaming, because they think, well, don't pray for me then. But praying for the will of the Father doesn't impose horrible circumstances on us just for the joy of it. And there's always a reason. There's always something in there that he's trying to uproot. He's trying to dig out. He's trying to get our attention with. And if we don't listen to those things, what do they say? Pain is it has a voice, and it has a purpose. It's meant to put you into a place of action. It's meant to you do something about it, not just sit there and wait until the house falls down on you. So anyway.
Thank you for sharing that. Yeah, that's good. Kim, go ahead. Unmute.
I guess I just want to share that over the course of the years where I don't know, I'm easily overwhelmed when I think I should be doing something, and I'm trying my best to get everything done. I'm going to give you an example, because I feel like with whether it's the Amidah or it's some other significant prayer or activity that you've incorporated in your life, I feel like God always gives us the little reminders that we need to sometimes come back to the center of, well, why are we doing this? And I'm gonna give you a pretty personal example. I've probably been making challah for 20 years, and a couple of weeks before the end of school, I was exhausted. It was everything I could do. I was trying to get ready all week for Shabbat, and a Shabbat came, and I looked around, and I hadn't started my bread, and it was pretty late. And I sat down, and I just started crying, and I'm like, Father, I'm not going to get it all done. I'm not going to get it done. And I don't know what we're going to eat. And I sat down, and I said, I need for you to sit with me for a minute, because I'm all worked out about what I'm not going to get done. And I've done everything I can this week. I'm not feeling guilty because I'm failing. I'm feeling guilty because I want to do it and I can't. And he sat me down, and I could literally hear him say, go back and look again. What does the word challah mean? And I thought I knew. I thought I knew what challah meant. And when I looked it up again, I thought, well, okay, I'll look it up again. Challah is a little piece of bread that we break off and we burn. That's it. It's not the end product. It's not the process. It's the intention of, I am going to make bread, and I'm going to set aside that I am thankful to you that you provide everything I have. And then I was okay, because I realized I had given him everything I had that week, and it was time for me to rest. And he made Shabbat for me. And because I was willing to put this little tiny crumb in an oven and burn it, that's all he cared about, is I was willing. Whether I could do it that week, he didn't really care. He cared that I was willing. and that my heart was sitting where he wanted it. And I want to remind people that sometimes we just make it so much bigger than he ever intended. He wants our hearts to be in the right place, and he wants us to want to be near him, and he wants us to take the gifts that he's giving us. And in the last week and a half, I've wanted to do a couple things for my kids and they've refused. And they're doing it out of, oh, we don't need it, Mom. And my heart is broken because it's something I want to do and they won't take from me. And God said, do you see that I do that with you all the time. I try to give you gifts and you're too busy. Or you make an excuse why you don't need it. But if I'm just willing to step back and go, why am I really doing this? It's not to exhaust me. It's not to overextend me. It's not to prove to anybody else that I'm one thing or another, or to hold up. It's not to hold up my whole family. I'm not able. I'm not capable. I'm not wise. I'm not any of those things. But he loves me anyway. He just sometimes wants me to sit there and accept the fact that he's given me a gift and wants me to rest in it and be cradled. And that's sometimes the hardest thing for my pride to do.
Hey, that is beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing that. That's a great comment, because, and most of you that know me, I mean, you know my heart. I don't make challah every week. Sometimes we order cheese pizzas, or we have cauliflower pizza in the freezer and we throw on some little turkey pepperonis or nothing, or I don't know, throw them in the sometimes we eat nothing. I mean, sometimes we have cereal. I mean, we all compare our worst days to everyone else highlight reels because everyone's showing these beautiful things. And if it's exhausting you, then it isn't the rest. It isn't the crumb. It isn't the challah that you're supposed. Thank you, Kim. That it's beautiful. What a beautiful thing to apply to this as well, because Kim has gone through the whole process of learning all the things Jewish and all the conversion process and all the things to understanding what this is about. And that was the reason I asked her those questions, is a very respectable resource for you. And you hearing from her, one of the people that I know who I would think would grab on to some things to say, you don't have to. For me, it's been years. I'm like, how many years into this? And suddenly now he's saying to me, I want you to learn this. I want you to incorporate. And I'm like, okay, then Father, you have to show me how to do it so I don't take it on in pride. And like when Yeshua said to them, he said, don't be, and it was one of the last slides, don't be like those who are on the corners saying the big prayers. Don't be like those who are like saying you're showing, I'm doing my Amidah now. Don't be sending me pictures of you on here and putting them on. Look I'm doing my Amidah right now. I'm standing. And you have the big picture that you just took of yourself, selfie, want to brag about how you're doing, because there's other people who don't have time they maybe do it once a week, once a month. Maybe they're like, this is all I can do on a Shabbat. Pray and say, Father, is this something now that you want me to incorporate? We're incorporating this in this discipleship. We're wanting to do discipleship on Wednesdays because we're wanting you to be able to say, there's a lot of people who've asked, I don't know what this means. Is it something I have to do? And for us to just kind of do like a Reader's Digest version for you tonight and say, again, you heard Kim, a year and a half of studying all this. We did this in an hour, with answering questions and people going in. It really is something to say, if I'm having struggle with prayer, then maybe he might be urging you, maybe this next season, this next new Torah cycle, this next year, he might be telling you that you get to focus on prayer this year. I feel like that's what he's telling me. It's a year that for me, he wants me to focus a little more on prayer. I'm not good at it. I am not good at it. Kim, sister, I am not good at it at all. I already told you. If you ask me to pray for you, I will pray right then because I will forget later. I'm going to do it right then. You'll notice that on the messages, when you guys put messages in there, I'm praying right there because I'm moving on and there's 45 other things happening. And but he said, he knew he created me like this and he loves me like this. And he knows what my abilities and disabilities and other abilities, he knows all of that. So thank you, Kim, for being vulnerable and sharing that with us, because I think you set a lot of women free today. For those of you who have the time, because there's different seasons in our life. That's the reason the women weren't required to do the same things as the men, not because we're not as important, is because we are busy. We're doing a lot of other things. So thank you all. Now I did just go down and I posted that prayer. That bedtime prayer was actually, I found one from Sombra. I didn't find one from Simi, but I did find the one from Sombra. that she wrote out a little bedtime prayer she did with the kids. And then I also posted that Zoom video. I'll rename it so you guys know what it is. But it's now inside your library as well. So if you have your Kajabi app, or if you go into your computer and you go into your library, it's in there. Do we have any other questions? Can we go ahead and, I just want to bless everyone, and then we're going to stop the recording. We're going to open up for a few questions for those of you who might be, have some questions. Let's go ahead and stop the recording.